It was just another day for Captain Sun Yan and his firefighter squad until everything changed in an instant. One moment, he was rescuing people from a raging fire, and the next, he was lying in a hospital bed, injured. But what really shocked him was who walked through the door. His doctor was none other than his high school love, Suchin. 10 years ago, they were just teenagers. Suchin had been new to his school, and from the first day, Sun Yan couldn't take his eyes off her. They quickly became close, and soon they were more than friends. But things weren't easy for them. Sun Yan came from a modest, middle-class family, while Suchin's family was rich and influential. Her mother was not happy about the relationship and pressured Suchin to end it. Heartbroken, she left Sun Yan, thinking they'd never meet again. Yet here they were, face to face, after all these years. But there was a catch. Suchin didn't recognize him. He was still wearing his mask, which hid most of his face. She noticed his injury and asked him to take off his mask to check his mouth. But Sun Yan abruptly refused. Without a word, he walked out, leaving her with an uneasy feeling. As he left, memories flooded her mind. There was something familiar about him, especially his eyes. Could it really be him? She ran outside to find him, but the firefighters had already driven off. Her heart raced, questions swirling in her mind. The next day, Suchin was at work when her property manager called, informing her of a fire near her neighborhood. Without a second thought, she rushed to the scene to help. When she arrived, Sun Yan and his team were already there, blocked by a car left in the way. With no owner around, the firefighters worked together to push the car aside, clearing the path to the burning building. Chaos filled the air, thick smoke, blaring sirens, and frantic shouts. Just as Suchin stepped forward to help, Sun Yan grabbed her arm, thinking she was a bystander. She quickly told him she was a doctor and was there to treat the injured. He gave a slight nod and let her through. Inside, Sun Yan led his team to look for anyone trapped, while Suchin helped those injured outside. Suddenly, a loud explosion echoed from within. Her heart skipped a beat as she glanced toward the building, hoping he was safe. Thankfully, his team radioed back that everyone was okay, but they were ordered to evacuate due to the risk of more explosions. Just as they were pulling back, Sun Yan spotted a child hiding in a corner, crying for help. Ignoring the danger, he ran to rescue the child. As he reached the exit, another explosion rocked the building, and flames burst out, engulfing everything in their path. The crowd gasped, fearing the worst. But then, out of the smoke, Sun Yan appeared, carrying the child safely in his arms. Suchin rushed over, worried he might be hurt, but he assured her he was fine. His instructor scolded him for taking such a big risk, but Sun Yan only shrugged. He'd saved a life, and that was all that mattered. Just then, the owner of the car they'd moved arrived, furious about the damage to his fancy sports car. Sun Yan calmly talked him down, and Suchin couldn't help but feel a mixture of admiration and nostalgia. On the ride back, the instructor casually asked Sun Yan if he knew the doctor helping the victims, but Sun Yan stayed quiet, lost in his thoughts. That night, Suchin found herself thinking of him too. She dug out an old bag of keepsakes, finding a jacket with his name on it. Memories flooded back of their young love, the laughter, and the silly moments they shared. Driven by these memories, she decided to visit his aunt's home, hoping to learn more about him. But his aunt's response was cold. Sun Yan, she told her, rarely visited anymore, spending nearly all his time at the station. Days passed, and one evening, a couple arrived at the hospital seeking treatment for a burn. Just as Suchin was attending to them, injured firefighters, including Sun Yan, entered the hospital. She immediately moved to help, but the husband demanded more attention for his wife. Sun Yan stepped in, firmly telling the man to leave the doctor alone. Outside, Suchin finally got a chance to talk to him. It was their first real conversation in 10 years, and she couldn't help but ask him out for coffee. But Sun Yan's response was cold. He turned down her invitation, leaving her standing there, surprised and a little hurt. Later that night, a fierce storm hit the city. Streets flooded, and Suchin's car stalled in deep water. Panicked, she called emergency services, and soon enough, help arrived. It was Sun Yan again. With incredible strength, he lifted the car just enough to pull her out. He handed her his jacket, gently scolded her for driving in the storm, and then went on his way to help others. The next day, she went to the fire station, hoping to thank him properly. But Sun Yan kept his distance, asking the guard to tell her he wasn't there, though he watched her from afar, hidden. His instructor noticed and encouraged him to speak to her, but Sun Yan only shook his head. He wanted to leave the past behind. A few days later, Suchin found herself at his aunt's home again, where she ran into him. Returning his jacket, she thanked him for saving her life. But Sun Yan asked her directly, "Why do you keep trying to meet me?" He told her he didn't want to see her unless she was ready to commit fully, even marry him. She was stunned, struggling for words. Before she could respond, he added that he knew she couldn't make that choice, leaving her standing there, heart pounding, unsure what to do next. Suchin stood there, speechless, as Sun Yan's words sank in. He was closing himself off, unwilling to open his heart again after the hurt he'd felt all those years ago. Just as he turned to leave, a call came in, an accident nearby. A car had fallen into a canal, and the rescue team, including Suchin, rushed to the scene. When they arrived, the team began cutting through the wreckage to reach the trapped passenger. Suchin climbed inside to tend to the injured person, but suddenly the car shifted, sliding further down the hill. She didn't see the jagged piece of metal swinging toward her until it was almost too late. In a flash, Sun Yan was there, pulling her back just in time, taking the blow himself. He winced as the metal scraped his back, but he managed to save her. After the victim was safely in the ambulance, Suchin urged Sun Yan to come to the hospital for treatment. He refused at first, but instructor Su Jun insisted, so Sun Yan reluctantly went along. In the hospital, he immediately requested a different doctor, but Suchin wasn't about to let him get away that easily. She had him sit down and gently cleaned his wound, stitching it carefully. As she finished, she looked into his eyes, her voice barely a whisper. "Sun Yan, can we start over?" she asked, hope flickering in her gaze. Before he could respond, Liang, a senior firefighter and close friend, entered the room, visibly concerned. She helped Sun Yan put his shirt back on and guided him out, leaving Suchin to watch silently, her heart heavy with uncertainty. Once outside, Liang asked Sun Yan about the doctor. She offered to step back if he had feelings for Suchin, but he shook his head, saying neither relationship was in his future. Sun Yan had become hardened, determined not to be hurt again. The next morning, Suchin woke up to loud knocking at her door. She opened it to see the rescue team, asking for permission to use her balcony to reach a child stuck outside the building. She quickly agreed, and after the team saved the child, she treated his minor injuries. As they were leaving, Suchin caught one of the firefighters aside, asking him to secretly send her Sun Yan's contact number. When Sun Yan lingered for a moment to accept her offer of tea, She took the chance to ask if he'd be free that weekend. But once again, he ignored her question and walked away. That night, as she scrolled through Sun Yan's profile on WeChat, a small smile crept onto her face. The next day, she decided to go to the fire station herself. She playfully asked Sun Yan out, but he declined again. Sensing his resistance, she pushed, reminding him that she'd let the rescue team use her home and teasingly demanded a treat in return. He had no choice but to agree, and they set a date. The day of the date arrived, and both prepared with nervous excitement. Suchin put on makeup with her friend's help, while Sun Yan even got a fresh haircut. They met at an old local restaurant they used to frequent years ago, but the reunion didn't go as Suchin had hoped. Sun Yan, guarded and distant, finished his meal quickly, urging her to do the same. She tried to lighten the mood, playfully stuffing food into her mouth, but he grew impatient and stepped outside to wait for her. Just then, a call from the police station came in. Sun Yan's cousin, ex-Mao, had been arrested for selling fake products. He rushed to the station, and Suchin followed, eager to help. At the police station, they learned ex-Mao had refused to reveal her supplier. Understanding the trouble ex-Mao was in, Suchin took her aside, urging her to cooperate, explaining that Sun Yan would help her if she did. Finally, ex-Mao agreed and gave the police the information they needed. Days later, tragedy struck when Sun Yan's team responded to a major rescue operation. A massive explosion occurred, and this time, his friend and instructor, Su Jun, was caught too close. He was rushed to the hospital, badly injured, with severe burns covering part of his face and one arm now useless. Sun Yan arrived as soon as he heard, but seeing his friend lying there, scarred and unable to return to duty, was a heavy blow. They had worked side by side for over 8 years, and now Su Jun's career was over. Su Jun, despite his injuries, tried to console Sun Yan. He reminded him that he'd be able to spend more time with his aging parents, something they'd argued about just days before. Su Jun had wanted a transfer to be closer to his family, but Sun Yan had resisted, wanting him at the main station. Now, Sun Yan regretted not understanding sooner. He realized Su Jun hadn't even submitted his transfer request, leaving them with a painful what if. A few days later, they held a farewell ceremony for Su Jun, honoring his years of bravery and service. While Suchin was battling with these events, pressure was mounting at home. Her adoptive mother, who had kept her away from Sun Yan all those years ago, now tried to arrange a wealthy suitor for her. When Suchin hinted she was seeing someone, her mother made it clear that she wouldn't approve of anyone below their family's high standards, even threatening to intervene as she had in the past. Her father held the same strict views, dismissing her feelings. Soon after, Suchin met with one of her mother's suggested suitors, Gan. He came from a prestigious family and had everything her parents wanted in a match. But during their lunch, Suchin's phone buzzed with a message from Sun Yan. She quickly excused herself, claiming an emergency at the hospital, and left in a hurry. The following day, Suchin and Sun Yan met at a restaurant. She was about to share something important with him, but suddenly an explosion erupted in the kitchen, throwing everyone into panic. Even though Sun Yan was off duty, his firefighter instincts kicked in the moment he heard an explosion in the restaurant kitchen. Without hesitation, he rushed in and saved a woman trapped inside, carrying her to safety. Once they reached outside, he realized the woman was Suchin's friend, Za. Seeing his bravery, Za was instantly drawn to Sun Yan and kept asking Suchin for his contact number. Wanting to keep her relationship with Sun Yan private, Suchin hesitated but finally shared his number with Jia. Jia quickly called him, hoping for a date, but Sun Yan wasn't interested. He turned her down, even rejecting her friendly offer of a treat. Hearing this, Suchin felt happy and relieved. She could tell that Sun Yan was loyal. But Jia didn't give up easily. She kept reaching out until finally Sun Yan agreed to meet her. When Jia told Suchin about their meeting, it left her feeling sad and unsure. That night, overwhelmed by sadness and jealousy, Suchin drank too much. In her emotional state, she went to Sun Yan's house and let out all her feelings. She told him how hard it was to be the only one fighting for their relationship. She accused him of not caring and leaving all the effort to her. Sun Yan's cousin, XO, tried to tell Suchin about the sacrifices Sun Yan had made for her, but Sun Yan stopped her, unwilling to let Suchin feel that weight. He would rather suffer alone than see her in pain. The next morning, as Sun Yan was leaving, his uncle advised him to fight for his love. "You're lucky to get a second chance," he said, encouraging Sun Yan to give it his all. Inspired, Sun Yan called Suchin and asked her to meet. When he arrived at her apartment, he made a simple meal for them, and they shared a quiet moment together. Sun Yan finally spoke his heart. He wanted to be with her, but needed her to stand up to her family. He couldn't face another heartbreak, and told her it was now or never. Either they fully committed or went their separate ways. Suchin hesitated, torn between her love for Sun Yan and loyalty to her family. As he left, Suchin's brother, Chin, arrived to take her away. On the drive, she admitted she felt trapped, as though she was always being trained to follow orders. She wished she could be with both her family and Sun Yan, but her parents forced her to choose. The next day, the firefighters were enjoying a meal that Jia had sent, still trying to impress Sun Yan. But he'd had enough. He called Jia, asking her to stop and telling her that Suchin was his first love. He'd only agreed to meet Jia to ask her to leave him alone. Disappointed, Jia later went to Suchin. Frustrated, she hadn't known about Suchin and Sun Yan's relationship. But despite her disappointment, Jia encouraged Suchin to fight for her love, seeing that Sun Yan only had feelings for her. Encouraged by Jia, Suchin visited her mother, hoping she'd understand. She explained how Sun Yan made her feel happy and safe, but her mother became furious, refusing to even hear his name. She believed Sun Yan came from a bad family and was only interested in Suchin's wealth. She reminded Suchin of his troubled past, suggesting that he would eventually hurt her. Suchin thought back to Sun Yan's difficult life. His mother had abandoned him and his father when he was young, choosing a wealthier man. Left alone, Sun Yan had cared for his father, until he too passed away. His life was lonely and full of hardship until Suchin entered it, brightening his days. He'd even tried reconnecting with his mother once, but she refused to see him. After that, Sun Yan decided she was no longer part of his life, finding comfort in his friendship with Suchin. One day, the rescue team was called to remove a beehive from a roof. But while a firefighter tried to take a photo of himself, he slipped, causing the bees to scatter and sting Sun Yan. He was taken to the hospital where Suchin was on duty. She treated him, but their close moment was interrupted when some nurses walked in, leaving them both flustered. Outside, he met Suchin's brother, Chin, who demanded that Sun Yan stay away from his sister. Though Chin was not her biological brother, he was protective of her. But Sun Yan stood his ground, saying that the choice was Suchin's. Chin argued that Sun Yan would never be good enough for her, But Son Yan knew that love wasn't about social status. Soon, the team received an urgent call about hikers stranded in the mountains. After a tough search, they found the hikers, but one was badly injured and needed immediate care. Son Yan called Suchin, who guided him through the first aid steps over the phone. But on their way down, one firefighter lost his footing and fell down a cliff into a lake. Ignoring his exhaustion, Son Yan went down to save him, only to find his teammate's leg pinned under a heavy rock. He couldn't free him alone, so he sent the others to take the hikers to safety, while he stayed behind to keep his friend warm and hopeful. Back at her home, Suchin grew increasingly worried as her messages to Son Yan went unanswered. Finally, the team returned to the base camp, where they left the hikers safely and hurried back for Son Yan and their injured teammate. When they reached them, Son Yan was visibly drained but relieved. When they arrived back at the base camp, they noticed that all the hikers, their families, and even the news reporters had already left, not waiting to see if the rescuers returned safely. Son Yan, though tired, smiled softly and said, "This is our life. We don't do it for praise. We do it because it's right." Son Yan texted Suchin as soon as he returned to the station, letting her know he was safe. Seeing his message, she breathed a sigh of relief and finally went to sleep. With Sujun gone after his injury, a new instructor named Jian took charge of the rescue team. He was also the man Suchin's mother had tried to set her up with earlier. Jian suggested that they should have a medical team on call during rescue missions, especially after seeing how much they needed medical help while saving the hikers. He pitched the idea to the officials, and they agreed. Soon after, Suchin arrived with a doctor and a team of nurses to join the rescue missions. During the training, Suchin showed the firefighters basic first aid techniques. She started with CPR and asked Son Yan to be her patient as she demonstrated. She needed him to remove his shirt to show where to press on the chest. Son Yan hesitated, feeling a bit awkward, but took off his shirt. However, when Suchin touched his chest to demonstrate, he became uncomfortable and stepped away. The next day, the firefighters took the medical team through their own training to strengthen them for field missions. While Suchin was running on a treadmill, Son Yan joined her on the treadmill beside hers. Watching him run faster, she tried to keep up by increasing her own speed. But Son Yan knew it was too fast for her, so he got off his treadmill and gently stopped hers. She suddenly felt pain in her ankle and sat down. She'd sprained it trying to run so quickly, so Son Yan carefully treated her ankle while the other firefighters watched in surprise. The following day, the team received an emergency call about a traffic accident. The rescue team and the medical team worked together, giving the injured people proper care on the spot. Because of their quick help, they saved a life, and the team took a photo together to remember the successful mission. As they continued working together, the connection between Suchin and Son Yan grew stronger, their bond deepening with each shared experience. Back at the station, Suchin noticed Son Yan chatting with a female officer from the rescue center. Feeling a bit jealous, she asked him about her, but he only made her more curious, not giving her a clear answer. To get back at him, Suchin started talking to Jian in front of Son Yan, even extending the conversation, just to see his reaction. Later, when Son Yan asked Jian about Suchin, Jian teased him, saying they had already met, and that Suchin's mother wanted them to be together. Son Yan then revealed to Jian that Suchin was his first love, and Jian laughed, admitting he had been teasing him and knew about their past all along. Meanwhile, Suchin's mother found out that her daughter was working with the rescue team. She didn't approve and spoke to the hospital director, pushing him to recall the medical team from the rescue missions. She also arranged a meeting with Sun Yan at a restaurant where she admitted she had tried to destroy his family's reputation years ago. She threatened him again, but Sun Yan firmly told her that he wasn't the same helpless child he once was. He warned her to stay out of his life and left, paying for their coffee. Back at the station, Jian informed Sun Yan that the authorities were recalling the medical team, likely due to Suchin's mother's influence. Knowing they didn't have much time, Sun Yan quickly arranged for the firefighters to learn as much first aid as possible before the medical team left. During a training exercise, some of the nurses wanted to try out the firefighters' equipment, but the water pressure got out of control, accidentally spraying Suchin while she was taking a photo. Sun Yan saw this and took her to the changing room, giving her his uniform to wear while he gently dried her hair to keep her from catching a cold. The moment brought back memories, and he even combed her hair, just as he used to do 10 years ago. Suchin took the opportunity to ask him about his life during the years they were apart, especially about his time in the military. But Sun Yan stayed quiet, which made Suchin feel upset. What he didn't tell her was that his time in the military had been rough. He'd been shot on a mission and nearly died, but the thought of seeing Suchin again kept him going. He carried a lighter with her photo, which once even saved him by blocking a bullet. However, he didn't share this because her mother had repeatedly blocked his promotions, forcing him to leave the army. Later, Suchin's mother set her up with another man, but during their conversation, Suchin admitted she already had a boyfriend. She wasn't interested in meeting anyone else. Her heart was with Sun Yan. After a small argument with him, she couldn't stop thinking about him, and while looking at his profile picture, Sun Yan accidentally called her. They shared a playful, romantic conversation, with Suchin teasing him about his low EQ, saying he didn't understand her feelings well enough. Soon after, the rescue team planned an emergency drill at the hospital, and Suchin was chosen to play a doctor stuck in the pharmacy during the simulation. When the drill started, she waited eagerly for Sun Yan to come rescue her, but he arrived late, and she jokingly showed her annoyance. Suddenly, real tremors shook the building. It was an earthquake. Without a second thought, Sun Yan shielded her with his body as objects fell from the shelves around them. Once the shaking stopped, he lifted her in his arms to protect her feet from broken glass, then carried her to safety before rushing off to help others evacuate. A few days later, Suchin found a lighter in the firefighter truck with her picture on it. She realized it belonged to Sun Yan and returned it to him, finally asking if they could be together again. Sun Yan simply smiled, and she knew they were going to give their love another chance. One day, the rescue team received an unusual call from a jewelry store. A woman had tried on an expensive ring, but now it was stuck on her finger, and she was in pain. Her husband scolded her, and the couple became distressed, worried about the cost if the ring had to be cut. The rescue team convinced the woman's son to allow them to cut the ring to relieve her pain, and after carefully removing it, they suggested the store manager repurpose the ring into something new and reimburse the family, resolving the problem peacefully. Back at the station, Sun Yan found Jian, a firefighter who looked anxious and restless. Despite Sun Yan's suggestion to take a break, Jian kept searching for more earthquake victims. When Sun Yan asked what was wrong, Jian admitted he was worried about his mother, who was in an area hit by the earthquake, and he hadn't been able to reach her. Sun Yan promised he'd ask the officials for help in contacting her. Later, Liang, an administrative firefighter, came with the good news. Jian's mother was safe. The whole team felt relieved and celebrated together. After the long rescue mission, Sun Yan met with Suchin, playfully asking if she missed him. Trying to tease him, she replied that she hadn't missed him at all. Disappointed, he began to leave, but she stopped him, kissing him deeply. They went inside and shared a romantic evening together. Now that they were closer than ever, Sun Yan began staying at Suchin's place. He even bought her some safety tools, just in case she ever got into a dangerous situation. Their love and respect for each other had grown immensely. They felt more connected than ever before. During the earthquake rescue, there was a moment when Sun Yan was trapped under heavy debris. Suchin, hearing of his injury, was determined to reach him, despite the danger. She insisted on going down to where he was trapped, saying that if anything happened to him, she couldn't bear it. She managed to reach him and give him medical aid, but soon she was called to treat another patient. Reluctantly, she left, and soon after, the firefighters rescued Sun Yan, rushing him to surgery. The next morning, as Suchin finished her duties, she hurried to Sun Yan's tent, but on the way, she saw a body being carried out. Her heart stopped as she checked, fearing it was Sun Yan, but thankfully, it wasn't. She found him safe in another tent with an army friend who had served alongside him. The friend assumed she was Sun Yan's wife, having seen her photo on a lighter Sun Yan had always carried. Sun Yan explained they weren't married yet due to some obstacles, and his friend teased him, noting his own recent promotion, a reminder of Sun Yan's decision to leave the military. Later, the firefighters informed Sun Yan that a child he had saved was actually the son of a military officer who was away, helping earthquake victims. The officer was incredibly grateful for Sun Yan's bravery. With life slowly returning to normal, Sun Yan and Suchin enjoyed spending quality time together. They went to the movies, visited new places, and shopped for groceries to make meals together at home. One evening, Sun Yan cooked for them, and they shared a cozy candlelight dinner. When he got up to leave, Suchin ran after him, not ready to say goodbye. She kissed him, and they spent the night together, enjoying a peaceful morning breakfast the next day. In the elevator, Suchin asked Sun Yan about Liang, a female firefighter he worked with, wondering if he liked her. Smiling, he assured Suchin that she was the only woman he loved, easing her worries. At the station, Liang was briefing the team on future plans, and during a break, Jian noticed she had a mild cough. He left her a bottle of water and a note, reminding her to take care of her health. It seemed like a new love story was starting there as well. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Suchin received an award for her hard work during the earthquake crisis. On stage, she dedicated it to Sun Yan, thanking him for guiding her to the victims. Later, the senior doctor awarded her a rare and prestigious medal, surprising her colleagues as this doctor had never found anyone worthy of it before. Suchin felt proud, but her thoughts remained with Sun Yan, hoping for a message from him. Finally, a message from Sun Yan arrived that evening, bringing a big smile to her face. The next day, at lunch, Suchin tried once more to convince her parents to accept her relationship with Sun Yan. However, they remained firm in their refusal and even scolded her for not following their wishes. But this time, Suchin was ready. She told them that if they didn't allow her to be with Sun Yan, she would leave. She expressed how, for the first time in a long time, she felt truly happy and wanted them to care about her happiness too. Her father argued that they had always treated her well and never made her feel like an adopted child, so she should listen to them. But Suchin explained that they had always used her to enhance the family's image, planning her future to suit their reputation and wealth. To show her determination, Suchin returned her keys to the car and house, saying she wouldn't use anything they'd given her until they accepted Son Yan. She promised to keep visiting them, hoping they would understand. Her mother, furious, called her ungrateful, and her father sadly noted how she had hurt them. Heartbroken but resolute, Suchin left, ready to start her life with Son Yan. Later, as she sat on a bridge waiting for him, Son Yan finally arrived, and she ran to hug him. She had missed him deeply after the confrontation with her parents. Son Yan took her to his aunt and uncle's home, where they welcomed her warmly. Over dinner, they enjoyed a friendly, heartfelt conversation that felt just like family, giving Suchin a sense of belonging and warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. Suchin's mother had always tried to impress her by showing off her wealth, frequently taking her to luxury malls and buying expensive things. Yet despite these gestures, they weren't close at heart. Her mother even introduced her to another wealthy, well-educated man, hoping to set her up. But when they met, Suchin made her feelings clear. Pointing at Son Yan, who was nearby, she confidently told her mother and the man that Son Yan was her boyfriend. Son Yan stepped forward, saying he was taking Suchin home, and her mother walked away, visibly angry. Feeling relieved, Suchin hugged Son Yan tightly, as if finally finding peace after a tough day with her mother. From then on, Suchin started living with Son Yan at his place. She was happier than ever, choosing to ride a bicycle to the hospital instead of using a car. One day, at the hospital, Suchin found her colleague, Dr. Yangi, looking upset. A critically ill patient had died during Dr. Yangi's treatment, and the patient's family was blaming the hospital and demanding a refund. Suchin tried to comfort her, reassuring her that she had done everything right and that the patient's condition had been too severe to survive, especially since the family had delayed paying for surgery. This conversation seemed to ease Dr. Yangi's guilt a little. The next day, Jian, a firefighter, was having dinner with his parents. They expressed concern about his dangerous job and encouraged him to find something safer. Recently, Jian had narrowly escaped injury during a rescue, thrown by an explosion, but luckily unhurt. That night, he shared his parents' concerns with Son Yan, who told him that he was valued on the team and would be missed if he left. This encouragement made Jian decide to stay. Soon, the rescue team received an emergency call about a gas leak. The gas was highly poisonous, and no one wanted to enter the building. Wearing protective suits, Son Yan and Jian went in to fix the leak. Unfortunately, Son Yan's suit was accidentally torn by a sharp metal edge, exposing him to the toxic gas. After coming out, he collapsed and was rushed to the hospital, where Suchin, terrified for his life, performed CPR. Despite the low chances of survival, Son Yan pulled through, much to her relief. Shaken by how close she came to losing him, Suchin cried, and Son Yan comforted her, promising to consider a safer position. Not long after, a group of company employees, celebrating with fireworks, accidentally set fire to their building. The rescue team arrived, but during the mission, a sudden explosion injured one of the firefighters, Yang Qi. Severely burned, Yang Qi was taken to the hospital, but despite the doctor's efforts, he did not survive. His death affected everyone deeply, especially Son Yan, who told Suchin he couldn't leave his job now. He felt he owed it to Yang Qi to continue their mission of helping others. Meanwhile, Suchin's brother, Yan Qin, also clashed with their mother over her controlling nature. Frustrated, he stormed out of the house and went to a bar to drown his anger. A waitress, who had feelings for him, informed Izzy, an old acquaintance, who also liked Yenchin. Izzy came to the bar, hoping for a connection, but Yenchin coldly rejected her, believing she was only interested in him for his money. Hurt by his harsh words, Izzy left, feeling humiliated. In a twisted act of revenge, Izzy returned to the bar, tore her clothes, and created fake bruises on her neck. When Yenchin's mother called him, Izzy answered and pretended to cry, hinting at being assaulted. She also contacted the class monitor, accusing Yenchin of rape, which quickly spread online. Soon, Yenchin was in custody, refusing to speak to anyone. His mother considered offering Izzy money to make the issue go away, but Yenchin warned that giving her bank details could backfire. Meanwhile, Suchin and Son Yan, upon learning about Yenchin's arrest, rushed to the police station. Suchin tried to speak to her brother, but he didn't want to see anyone. Son Yan then spoke with XO, his cousin and Izzy's classmate, who revealed a shocking detail. She had been at the bar that night and saw Izzy faking the injuries. She had even recorded a video as proof, but was hesitant to share it. The Mang family had mistreated her family and hindered Sun Yan's career over the years, so she felt no loyalty to help them now. Sun Yan, understanding her hesitation, urged her to do the right thing. Not for the Mang family, but because it was just. XO finally agreed to hand over the evidence to the police, setting the stage to clear Yenchin's name. XO decided to help clear Yenchin's name, but she wanted to do it her own way. She didn't want money from the Mang family. Instead, she asked to meet Yenchin's parents alone at her home. When they arrived, she reminded them of how they had wronged her family in the past, making her father kneel and beg before them. XO demanded they admit their actions in front of the police, and she also wanted one of them to kneel before her as her father had done. Yenchin's father moved to kneel, but his mother stopped him, admitting the wrongdoing was hers. With tears in her eyes, she lowered herself, but just as she was about to kneel, XO stopped her. She handed over the evidence, unable to watch Suchin's parents humiliate themselves. Yenchin's mother took the evidence to the police, confessed her past actions, and Yenchin was released. However, as a result of her actions, she was sent to jail. Feeling betrayed, she blamed her children for making her suffer. But Yenchin replied that someone in the family had to take responsibility for their actions. Meanwhile, Izzy was arrested for falsely accusing Yenchin, but he asked the police to let her go. He met with her privately, encouraging her to start fresh and never use such tricks again. Izzy, realizing Yenchin was a kind man, decided to leave and begin a new life. Back home, Sun Yan and Suchin were filled with joy as they planned their future. They even went for a wedding photo shoot, dressed in beautiful attire, looking like a perfect couple. Meanwhile, Suchin's father applied for bail for her mother, and the hospital director, who had always followed Suchin's mother's orders, was also arrested. Izzy, packing her belongings, prepared to start her life anew. One day, Suchin's father visited Son Yan's house, bringing gifts. He saw how truly happy his daughter was with Son Yan. Meeting Son Yan's family, he enjoyed a warm lunch with them, realizing that his daughter's happiness was more important than the family's social status. He left content, knowing she was in good hands, and Son Yan promised to always care for her. Later, Son Yan took Suchin to their new home, a cozy place he had built just for her. The house had everything she'd dreamed of, including a rooftop garden. Son Yan knelt down, proposing to her, promising to take care of her for the rest of his life. She happily accepted, and they celebrated their new beginning. Sometime later, Suchin met her brother Yenchin at a restaurant. He noticed her engagement ring and congratulated her, genuinely wishing her happiness. As they left, Suchin texted him, thanking him for his constant support. Yenchin turned, smiling at his sister, a warm moment as they both shared a newfound happiness. Even Suchin's mother had softened. She was now happy for Suchin and Sun Yan. Shortly afterward, a severe tsunami hit the country, causing widespread destruction. Yenchin, on his way to help an elderly couple, saw Izzy assisting people on the road, showing she had truly changed. The rescue team worked tirelessly to save lives, and one night, a terrible accident left many vehicles damaged, including one carrying the Mang family. Trapped and injured, Suchin's mother managed to honk the horn for help. Hearing the horn, Sun Yan rushed over, broke the car window, and saw it was Suchin's mother inside. He carried her to safety. When others praised him for his bravery, Mrs. Mang, proud and grateful, announced that he was her daughter's fiancé. After the tsunami, Mrs. Mang even took charge of planning Suchin and Sun Yan's wedding, a beautiful celebration of their love. Jian and Liang, their friends, had also grown close and were now happily together. In the final scene, Suchin and Sun Yan sat together on the rooftop garden of their new home. With the stars above them, Sun Yan shared his firefighter's vow, a pledge to serve humanity selflessly and fearlessly. They smiled, knowing they had found love and purpose in each other's arms, ready to face whatever the future might bring. As the night settled gently over the rooftop, Suchin leaned against Sun Yan, feeling the warmth of his promise and the strength of his love. The city lights flickered below them, a reminder of the countless lives they had touched and the paths they had traveled to find each other. Sun Yan held her hand, looking out at the world they had both vowed to protect, and whispered, "No matter what life brings, we'll face it together, side by side." With hearts full of gratitude and a future brimming with hope, they sat in peaceful silence, ready for a life woven with love, courage, and endless devotion.